Hello. We're looking at Android apps. In this video, we're looking at the Anki Android app for all of your flashcard needs. I think this is just straight up Android. Oopsie. We have Kotlin, mostly Kotlin, so is Kotlin. And I'm not really sure what I want out of looking at the Anki Android repo, but I will set a timer for 30 minutes. And we have an API. The API might be, there is a Anki Web. Maybe we will look at that just to see if that's Anki Web. And we have the Anki Droid directory. I don't know what Jacoco is. A Java code coverage library. Okay, and so we don't care about that. API has what? I don't know what iChai2 is. We have flashcards contract. The contract between Anki Droid and applications contains definitions for the supported URIs and columns. Flashcards contract defines the access to flashcard related information. Flashcards consist of notes and cards. To find out more about notes and cards, see the Anki manual. In short, you can think of cards as instances of notes. So this is actually, I have used Anki in the past. I occasionally try to use it. Personally, I find that it never really seems like the right balance. So I always stop using it. I find other ways of learning things and keeping information to be more productive for me. But I'm also like probably a pretty unusual case. And I have used Anki in the past to do things like study for tests. So your mileage may vary. There are a lot of people who really like the Anki approach. But one of the things I find a little bit doesn't seem quite right for me in the way that I work is this distinction between cards and notes. It's probably a useful distinction for programmers, but as a user-facing distinction, I find it a little bit confusing, and it doesn't seem to really enable the sort of flexibility that you would like it to, but it does kind of get in your way a few times. The most important data of notes/cards are fields. Fields contain the actual implementation of the flashcard that is used for learning. Typical fields are Japanese and English for a native English speaker to learn Japanese, or just front and back for a generic front, side, and back side of the card, without saying anything about the purpose. Note and card information is accessed in the following way. Each row of the note provider represents a note that is stored in the Anki Droid database. This provider must be used in order to find flashcards. The notes can be accessed by the note.content URI like this to search for note. So you're going to query flashcard note.content URI, a bunch of nulls, or this if you know the note's ID. I don't know if this is a local URI or a remote URI, and a bunch of other stuff. We get lots of nice comments. We get a content style URI, the authority for the flashcard provider. Okay, so what's the authority? We have build config authority. This is authority in the URI sense, I think. Okay, and it's the essentially the same as the apps, the apps like JVM package name. although there's a debug version and like a prod version. So I guess that's the authority. It's basically equivalent to the Java package name. So this is, I think for local cards that are on the device as opposed to cards on Anki Web. So you get some cursor to the flash card, and we have a URI. I don't know if the content thing is specific to Anki, but maybe it's specific to Android. Yeah. Content provider basics. A content provider manages access to a central repository of data. A provider is part of an Android application which often provides its own UI for working with the data. However, content providers are primarily used by other applications which access the provider using a provider client object. So I think this is for things like sharing with other apps, or maybe you have some way to, when you have some note-taking app, there might be a way to create a flashcard out of to create a flashcard out of some note you have. And MSA says, "Hey, yeah, so glad to be able to make it this time. I'm glad to have you, MSA." All right, and so this is a description of the database, and I think this API is mainly for consuming by other things, and it has to have some structure that you know how to make a card, I guess. So like if you have like a note that says Joey says to call at 5 o'clock, maybe there's some way you can highlight it so the Joey says to call at is the front of the card and 5 o'clock is the back of the card, and maybe you can somehow encode that in the URL and ask Anki to make a new card or something along those lines. I don't know if that's something you can do, but let's see if that's maybe that's something we can find out about. This is about iOS. So how about Anki create card from app? But from SMS? Create a new card from highlighted text. So on smartphones and e-readers, Anki gives one the ability to quickly send the currently highlighted text to a new card. I prefer to use the desktop version of Anki. It appears to be missing that functionality. Okay, so I think that's what this is for. That is interesting, but we're not going to look at that anymore. In the source directory, we have Amazon, presumably something like S3. Android test, main, and play. Play is probably the Play Store, which is the name of the Android store. All right, and what we've got Java, which I guess is where the Kotlin code goes as well. And Itchy2 must be the developer or something along those lines. And we have Anim, which is probably animation, Anki, which is probably the main Anki logic, annotation, animation, annotations, audio, which is for things like playing, the pronunciation of a word, lib Anki, compat, as I'm going to guess, compatibility, preferences is preferences, themes is themes, presumably some version of CSS. We have also utils and widget. Let's open all of these. I don't know. Let's see, we have about 21 minutes. Async doesn't have much. So the doing async like jobs in Android used to be pretty terrible, but Kotlin has proper coroutines. So async stuff is like should be pretty nice, but they have some support for like I guess just mainly like utilities. So they have this abstract async operation class, which has like a notification message, a notification title, and a handler message, the dialog handler message. So this is presumably for notifications. You have some message and title, and I don't know what the handler message is. Seems maybe different from a handler. And then we have deck picker. I think in Kotlin, this notation is basically adding this send notifications for async operation to the deck picker class, but you don't have to define that in the same file where you define the deck picker class. You can just do it from another file. And so to send a notification for async operation for a deck picker, you give it an async operation and a channel. I don't know. This is maybe just the, it's an Anki channel. It's not just a Kotlin async channel. And we have this dialog handler, store a persistent message instructing Android to perform the operation. So we're going to store a message, passing in the operation handler message to message. Okay, so I guess it's a message to the handler. And it'll show a basic notification. So we show the title, show simple notification title. And so that's fine. And now I'm curious about what this channel is. Is there a channel.kt? No. Maybe the channel is defined in that very same file. How about notification channels? Create and update all the notification channels for the app. Here's some setup. Here. Okay, so here's the enum. So channel has general for general notifications, sync for synchronization notifications, global reminders, which has something to do with minimum cards due ticker title, deck reminders, scoped storage migration, and you can get the name of the channel. So this is, I guess, instead of having a something like a message bus, it seems like they have this enum that they are like different ways of batching up notifications. These might be literally different asynchronous channels. I forget exactly how coroutines work in Kotlin, but this seems like a message busy sort of structure where they're going to rely on Kotlin's coroutines and or async, which I think is probably built on coroutines to handle messaging between different parts of the app, is I think what's going on. Here's libanki. You've got backend, which is maybe the remote stuff, or maybe it's the database. You have note util, sort order util. Note.toBackend note. We'll create an Anki.notes.note. We'll set the note to this. And we're going to return note of, is this the same note? Well, I guess this is creating a variable called note, which is initialized with some of the data from this. And then we're going to return a new note that has these fields set. And by backend note, I think it means that this is the data structure that the web server understands. So tree sitter, that's a good name. Like the tree sitter parser thingy. So this app is great. Helped me get the A+ on my last college exam. That's great. Anki is really good for studying for tests, I think. All right, so I wanted to see something. What did I want to see? So it looks like we're communicating to the back end. That's fine. Oh, I wanted to see what was in Amazon, just so that I know that I can safely ignore it. I think it's probably nothing. Android manifest. Permissions camera. Oh, okay. There's a directory. So we have Amazon main, blah, blah, blah. Wait, no. What have I done? I clicked on Amazon. Oh, this is just up one, up one directory. I thought it was an empty directory. I guess my brain stopped working for a second. Okay, so there's just the manifest in here. I don't know why it's called Amazon. We can see if there's like a reference to S3. That's just indexing into some data from some SVG. We do have get it on the Amazon App Store. Maybe the Amazon App Store needs that that permission or something. Maybe it's for Kindle's not Kindle. Kindle? That's an Amazon thing, right? Fire is their tablet. I guess Kindle is their e-reader. I don't know if they still make Kindles. Yeah. You can still buy Kindles. You can still buy e-ink displays from Alibaba. This looks like an LCD display, which is different from an LSD display. Okay. So I guess that's what the Amazon directory is for, not for AWS stuff. Probably. And what else do we have? Okay, so that's backend stuff. Fine. UI has a bunch of things. These are just going to be all the UI components. I don't know what a key picker is. Square dialog, which allows you to select a binding for a key press that does not yet support. This does not yet support Bluetooth headsets. So, okay, so this is for like keyboard shortcuts, it looks like. Button item adapter, badge drawable, access value display, key picker, on gesture listener. Let's look at the on gesture listener real quick. Simplifies and adapts the simple on gesture listener to a consumer accepting a card viewer gesture. I don't know what any of that means. So we get some motion event. I guess we're doing things like what happens on double tap, what happens on long press. On fling, like maybe fling is like the what's that app? The dating app? Swiping left, swiping right sort of stuff, except with, I guess, cards. Okay, themes. We have themes.kt. And update current theme takes a context. And we get some stuff from the shared preferences. Theme follows system preferences. Mode night follows system. I don't know. Maybe this is just operating on Android themes. I don't know how Android themes work. So yeah, it seems to be some sort of maybe XML based style stuff. I don't know if it's related to CSS or HTML or what, but I think that Anki theme stuff was probably just manipulating Android themes. Here are some utils. We have things like bitmap util, color, etc., display utils. We will ignore that. Here's some widgets like the add note widget, widget permission widget, status. How about the add note widget? So this should be when you are adding a note. We have a companion object, which is some like data object that has some relationship in Kotlin. I forget exactly what it's about. This object, or this function, I guess, updates the widgets displayed in the provided context using the given app widget manager and widget IDs, setting up an intent to open a note editor with the caller as the deck picker. Yeah, I don't know what that's about. And we have in animation, we just have in anim, rather, we just have activity transition animation.kt. And we have this function slide with the activity and direction. I guess we're sliding between different activities. Direction start. If is right to left activity, then override pending transition, blah, blah, blah. I don't know why they're having a custom slide activity. We also have this get animation options. This is left to right. It depends on the layout direction. That probably depends on the locale. And so on and so forth. We have some inverse transition, which I guess they're just like hand coding the inverse to the one they hand coded above. And Tree Sitter is asking, what's the data structure used for saving cards with their frequency? That's what we are just getting to. We have about 9 minutes left, and that I would consider to be the scheduling logic. It might be in the database. Automatic answer. So automatic answer, I think, is like you can, tell it that if you take too long to remember the Japanese word for tomato, it will automatically flip to the back of the card and humiliate you because you didn't do it fast enough. How about we look at scheduler? So scheduler is 752 lines, which is pretty big for Kotlin. We see that we are importing so many things that it takes me several scrolls to get to the bottom of the imports. We have this JVM inline and not in lib Anki. JVM inline, presumably, because this gets called a lot and it's fundamental. And we have some note. This is a parameter for scheduler.setDueDate. This contains 3 elements: start, an integer, and an int optional, and change interval. And we have the set due dates thing, which I guess is the thing that's inlined. It's a value class. I forget what a value class is. Inline value classes that avoid allocations and work like normal classes. All right, well, it's something that you probably need to care about if you do Kotlin, but I don't want to dig into it too much. Okay, so we have this current state queue, which is a data class. Kotlin learned a lot from functional programming. So this is some data class. It's got a top card, a counts index, which is, I guess, set to counts.q, or is of type. I think it's of type counts.q. I don't know why a q is an index. An index seems like it should be an integer, and a q is a q, but that's what it is. I'll just have to keep in mind that counts index has probably a q API. We have states, which are scheduling states. We don't know what those are yet. It's presumably some enum. Can I click on it? No. Context, which is scheduling context. Some counts. And time box reach. This is maybe just for like saying I only want to study for 10 minutes. Learn ahead seconds is an int. And custom scheduling JS. I guess maybe this means that you can have custom scheduling logic in JavaScript, which is useful because I find the Anki scheduler to be for me, Anki is a lot is like feast or famine. Like as you get into it, a lot of times the cards will tend to bunch up so that you have days where you have like a ton of cards to get through and days where there's not so many, and they never seem to really line up with like what I actually feel like knowing myself, knowing psychology, knowing about how to learn things. I feel like I'm often looking at cards that I either know too well and they just won't go to the back of the line fast enough, or it's like hammering me with things that are too new and that I don't know yet. And there doesn't seem to be like it never really has the right feel, the scheduler. All right, thanks for stopping. Thanks for watching, David. I almost said stopping by, but you were here for just the beginning of the stream, and I really appreciate that. All right. Okay, so this is part of this stuff. I'm curious about scheduling states. See if you can find out what this should be just some enum, I think. I think that maybe this scheduling states might be from a different repository. What is this? This is Anki Droid. Let's see if we can find Anki, just the regular Anki. It helps in reviewing it. Yeah. Anki Text. I don't know if Anki Text is the real company behind Anki, or I don't know if it's a company or what's going on. But this is, I thought, written in Python, although they've been moving to Rust. And I don't know what scheduling states is. Oh, we have a proto. Look at that. I mean, this code so far is all really nice. So if I have a concern about the scheduler, this seems like a nice enough laid out project. I'm glad they're moving away from Python. I personally don't love doing Python. I've done a lot of Python in the past. I learned a lot of what I learned how to do programming wise, I learned in Python. So I have a fondness for it. But I'm finding that just for where I am, I don't personally love Python. So if I wanted to contribute to something like Anki, it's useful to me that they have places to contribute that are like, I can write some Rust or I can write some Kotlin or whatever. All right, but they have this proto, which is for the scheduler. The scheduling state has it's conceptually an enum, but these are messages rather than enum entries. There's new with some position. There's learning, which has remaining steps, scheduled seconds, elapsed seconds. I don't know if that's like lapsed seconds in the future. And then on optional card.fsrs memory state. Spaced repetition something maybe, which is the last thing. Then review has scheduled day, elapsed days, ease factor, lapses, leached. Leached is like it kind of penalizes cards that you fail too many times. Relearning. I don't really know how you get back in the relearning phase, but that's, I guess, something that you maybe used to know maybe a year ago, and then you're starting to forget again or something. Normal. And normal has one of new, learning, review, relearning, etc. Preview. I forget how preview works. A rescheduling filter, which has an original state, which is normal. And filtered, which I guess you maybe can potentially like filter to just the preview ones or filter to some rescheduling stuff. Like I think you're able to say like, I want to like look at the next day's cards because I have some extra time today and I won't tomorrow or whatever. And then I don't know what we're doing here, but this seems probably maybe is the top level scheduling state message. Is either normal or filtered. And then we have some custom data, which is just some string. The backend does not populate this field and get queued cards. The frontend is expected to populate it based on the provided card. If it's not set, when answering a card, the existing custom data will not be updated. And then we have messages for queued cards. The queue, I guess, has some enum. It's either new, learning, or review. A queued card has a card. A queue which is just whether it's new, learning, or review. I'm guessing these seem like states, but I'm guessing that maybe under the hood what's happening is that there are actually 3 queues: a new queue, a learning queue, and a review queue. In fact, now that I've said it out loud, I'm 98% certain that that's how Anki works. And so I think that's the name of a queue, even though this is not itself a queue. And then the queue card has scheduling states and context, and so on and so forth. We'll keep this proto open. And LC is saying, okay, so first of all, tree sitter, let me go back. Tree sitter says it helps in reviewing information you've already studied. But yeah, it does help reviewing information. I guess what I was trying to say is like, if there are, for example, a lot of cards, and I guess without really getting into the details, I feel a bit like it's hard to like tune when should you really review something. When does it matter? When does it not matter? And getting that right. And I often find when using Anki that doesn't seem quite right to me. It is true that reviewing stuff that you've learned is important. And like the binomial theorem or something, maybe you need to review that once a year or once every 6 months. That sort of thing. But perhaps something with more detail, like you're memorizing a phone number, maybe you need to review that like every day for a while. And so Anki tries to do that. I just think that getting the schedule right for all of the different things you might need to learn, and for all of the different people, that's kind of where it's hard. And the schedule has gotten a lot better over the last few years. So I think they're obviously, it seems to me clear that they are aware that that some people feel that way, I guess. And then LC is saying, off topic, but it would be interesting to hear the rest of your thoughts in learning and meta learning and psychology learning. Yeah. That is also the kind of topic that I like to share views on. And I will continue doing that. I don't know if I don't know about the rest of my thoughts. I feel like I have like an infinite supply of thoughts about it, but that's going to be, I guess, increasingly a theme of this channel, because we're going to be building some learning stuff. And I don't think, I think I've tried to say this in a fairly recent video, but so like my background, I went to graduate school for psychology, studied cognitive and developmental psychology. I eventually decided that I wanted to switch to math, and so I ended up getting a master's degree in psychology, and then I got a PhD in math. So my thinking about education is informed by a couple of things. One is the psychological literature that's pretty close to what I was studying when I was in grad school, but also the need for me to quickly learn things. For example, as I switched fields, and so I have a lot of different thoughts about that, and I have an interest in building tooling associated with how to learn things, and but I don't think I can give a concise description of what my thoughts are. But what I can do is continue to share my thoughts, such as they are. Congrats, info response. I guess this is for rewarding you for learning, maybe. We are out of time, but let me go back to this scheduler.kt stuff. We'll just look at it for a little bit. So there's some worker thread. I guess this is some annotation that tells you about Kotlin coroutines. And we have a scheduler, which is open. I think open means you can add to it as a class. I'm not sure. And it takes a collection. I don't know if I think a collection is maybe multiple decks. There's some legacy API stuff. Is there a non-legacy? I don't know. But at any rate, let's look maybe at current state, which returns, it's maybe a little bit like a getter because it seems to return current Q state rather. It returns an object current Q state, which is nullable. And so we're going to look at the queued cards, which we got somewhere. I don't know if they were defined here, or maybe this is a getter for the queued cards or something. And we're going to return the result of doing this big, what is possibly a computation, or maybe we're just calling this function. If the queue.cardslist.first or null, I'm not sure what first or null means. Then we're going to call this current queue state, which is either a function or a constructor. The top card will be the card that we get from it. I don't know if it is the thing that is in a parameter from this let block or if we got it from somewhere else. We're going to apply some start timer. And then when it.queue, I guess like when the queue has stuff in it, we'll set counts index to, this is like pattern matching, I think. We're going to look at the queue, and that's the name of the queue in the proto. And it's either new, learning, review, etc. And so we're going to set the counts index to the counts. You can set how many new count you want. You can set how many learned counts you want. And so this is just populating that. And we're just populating the rest of the fields from the state of the, I think the it probably comes from here, but I'm not sure. And I guess I'm not going to really look at the rest of this. But if we want to know that, I am curious about how the schedule is stored on the disk. But now that I see that there are protos for the scheduler, that seems like we don't have to have a super crazy database scheme. We just really have to persist the proto stuff to the, here's more scheduler stuff. This is probably a good thing to look at. You just have to persist the protos to the disk somehow. Probably as a database. Let's see if there's a SQLite database. I guess in lib Anki. Okay, so here's some class DB, close, blah, 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 query scalar. Insert. Into some table. I don't know where to find the actual things. DB, deck, storage, maybe? The storage, I guess, might be in memory. This is maybe storage for the decks themselves. You have this create DB, so maybe not for the decks. Update call set CRT equals get start day. The line is required for testing. Otherwise, Rust will override a mocked time. Oh, you know what? I think that maybe we are communicating with the Rust layer, which I think we are. Let's go to Anki Droid, the GitHub group or whatever they're called. The Anki Android backend is a JNI. JNI, I think, is Java native interface, essentially a foreign function interface. A JNI bridge between Anki Droid and Anki Desktop's Rust code. So I think that this is maybe where some of the database layer stuff is. I'm not sure exactly what the Rust code does. But we're not going to really look too much into it. Maybe we'll look just enough to see if it's fast to see what's going on. So here's RS Droid. We have backend native methods, Rust cleanup, translations, exceptions. And we do have a database folder, and we have some SQL statements. And we have an Anki database cursor. Anki supports SQL, blah, 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 blah. So let's look at some of these database statements. Bind blob, bind string. Do we have like select? Yeah. Well, at least in the tests, we have select. We have a database, yeah, util. Yeah, so this layer seems to be maybe the stuff that has a database, which is possibly why we didn't see something like a room implementation in the Anki Android thing. And we have this Anki proto stuff, and presumably somehow we're going to convert protos to something we can store in the database. Yeah, definitely repetition is super helpful for learning and comprehension. Okay, so I'm going to leave Anki Android there. Let's move along.